Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, Silver Dragon Crafts. I know it's been a while since I've posted a video, but that's due to semester break, the holidays, getting the boy back and forth to college and whatnot. But we're back now. I got a two-part video here. We'll post this one obviously just now. The next one will be hopefully next week after I do a little bit of editing. This one's called a Wizard's Library. It incorporates a lot of different techniques, and hopefully you learn something, or you can use some of the ideas in one of your next builds. So let's get into it. We call it a Wizard's Library. I started this build by building the framework for the loft, which will go in the back of the diorama, and then I started working on the floor, but as I got further and further into it I didn't like it, so I scrapped it. You'll see that later, and I built one that makes a little bit more sense and looks a little bit nicer on the finished product. This is the creation of many bricks that I used to build the walls of the Wizard's Library, using the Proxxon hot wire foam cutter, using a fan and a respirator just to make sure I don't get any of those fumes inside myself. And then I start to use the tried and true method of squishing the bricks in a plastic bag for texture, because my wife was sleeping and I didn't want to use the coffee can and the rocks and wake her up. But this works just as well. Sometimes you got to do it 3 or 4 times, but the texture comes out nice. And then you can start applying them to the base using a nice straight edge, a straight line, and then probably the next 2 hours waiting for glue to dry and for the walls to get built up to the height that you need. Doing a little dry fit to make sure that the loft fits with the floor into the dimensions that I built the walls. Making my last ditch effort to utilize this floor that I, for some reason, just didn't like it. Didn't fit well. It was just doomed from the beginning. But as you see at the end of this clip, that I'm still kind of optimistic that I can use it in the build. Here is a fine example of how not to use the chopper. This is Ladder Construction 101, because wizards gotta go upstairs. Uh, it's not as easy as it seems, trying to get everything nice and straight and whatnot, but I persevered and saw it through to the end, and I believe this ladder actually makes it to the actual final build. As I finish up the ladder, I move on to the new flooring for the loft, and basically I was just trying to make the corners look nicer and not have it look so haphazard. It turned out a lot nicer than the first floor, and hopefully you can see it when I show the nice pictures at the end. This method of creating texture on bricks is very common in terrain building and diorama building. You basically take some heavy duty aluminum foil, wad it up not too tight, and then just start smashing your bricks so they get little dents and little pockets in them. So this step comes from Jeremy over at Black Magic Craft. It's basically creating a sealer and a base coat of black paint to harden and bring together all the foam and bricks that might be loose. It's a mixture of Mod Podge, black paint, and a little bit of water. Then you just kind of apply it all over everywhere. Not too thick, because then the glue will fill up some of the holes that you just created with the aluminum foil. But you definitely want to try and get in all the nooks and crannies, otherwise the pink will show through when you're done, and not many castles were made out of pink rocks. So take your time. This is the longest step of the painting process. Take your time and get into all the cracks and crevices and whatnot, and you'll definitely be pleased with the outcome when you're done with your painting. Yeah, libraries have lots of books, and those books sit on shelves. So there's also lots of bookshelves in libraries, which is what I'm building here. I just used balsa wood and the chopper to get the right lengths and whatnot. A little bit of quick dry glue, put the shelves together, and then I'll stain them a little bit later. You can see there's a vertical piece of wood in the back of the bookshelf. That's because the size that I chose for the books that I built was just a little bit too big, so I kind of bumped the shelves forward a little bit so that the books would sit not so deeply in the bookshelves. These tables and chairs were built with toothpicks that had a nice top formed into them by the manufacturer, and I thought it would look good for the legs of the chairs, the legs of the tables, and even the back. So I used popsicle sticks and toothpicks to create the tables and chairs. Wizards be fancy. Yeah, they're kind of like that. So I built a fireplace so he could warm his little tootsies while he's studying his craft. The first ladder, the steps never really panned out properly. There was too many angles and too many pieces to try and glue in a straight line. So I started over with this one, and it was a lot easier and it came out a lot better. The interior walls receive a base coat of gray. If you use too much, you can always wipe it off like I did just there. I like to not go 100% coverage. I like to leave a little bit of black between the bricks. It adds depth and perception to the build. I used the rain gray on the inside walls and then used the darker gray on the outside due to weathering. But as you can see at the end, it looks pretty good when it's all done. That's the darker gray that I was talking about a second ago. Here's the Mod Podge step for the fireplace to get it ready for painting. And then we're going to move on to a dry brush for the outside walls. Just use a complementary lighter color than the first coat and get almost all the paint off your brush before you do the dry brush, and it'll just capture the highlights of the bricks and the fireplace. This is a special tool that I made for staining. I'm going to stain the tables and chairs and bookshelves with Early American from Minwax. Let them dry and then start assembling. Here's a shot from our off-site wood shop showing all the finished loft, ladders, and bookshelves. And then we're going to move on to the LEDs that are going to light the fireplace. I got those off of Amazon, and I've been using Woodland Scenics lighting systems, which is really very convenient. Maybe a quick shout out will get me some sponsorship. But here I'm going to hide the wires behind the loft so that there can be a mysterious green light in the back of the Wizard's Library. Okay, yeah, the wires that I was gluing to the back of the loft are for the torches that are going to be on the front of the loft. This is where I'm trying to get the green lights to go from the back wall into and going to be hidden underneath the loft. It takes a little finagling, but I get them, and they actually provide a really kind of cool green glow when it's completed. If you watch where I point instead of watching my hands, you'll see the light go on right there. Those are the torches that are going to be on the front of the loft with the wires that I glued to the back. And then here I'm going to show you that I used heat shrinking wire wrap to secure the connections of the wires. And then once I get done with that, I'll pull the wires through the back wall and plug them into the Woodland Scenics light hub. And that way all the torches, the fireplace, a chandelier that I'll build later, and the green glow will all be controlled through the light hub from Woodland Scenics. These are simply pieces of foam that I glued to the wall to hold the green light. Don't worry about them not being painted. They're going to be hidden by the loft and by the bookshelves that we built earlier. But I'm going to glue the green light right there to it so it kind of faces upwards and lights up the wall. But I think this is a good time for a break. We'll have to pick it up later and finish the build maybe next week. Thanks for watching.